All right, I think I lost the stream, so I am back and I will move on to the next project of Linda's as soon as someone pops in. So, my apologies. I don't know what happened with the connection of my previous stream. I wasn't notified of any disconnections or anything like that. Hopefully, hopefully it will come back. Hey there, Sally. Is the stream working now? Everybody can hear me, everybody can see me. I have no idea what happened. It just, for whatever reason, it just disconnected. I have no idea why. Usually if there's some kind of connection issue, um, my streaming software will tell me, but everything seemed fine on my end. But when I went over and checked, I just wasn't streaming anymore. It had stopped for whatever reason. So I'll give everybody like a minute or two to jump back in. I'm gonna get a drink of water really quick. Udon is still sleeping in his coconut. I I went out to clean the kitchen earlier today, and I walked in with lunch, and he was starting to come out of his coconut. His head was poking out, and as soon as I walked in and I looked down and I saw him like starting to come out of his coconut, he just zoomed right back into it, and I haven't seen him since. Okay. Well, I think we got a few people back. So let's talk about Linda's grapes here. Um, so really, really well done grapes. I think I think the biggest improvement on these grapes is just going to be value range. So you want to go brighter, try to go like, let's see where the brightest, this is sort of the brightest color here. If you could take this brighter color and just take it a little bit further, just a tiny bit further. And for the darker color, take that just a little bit further. Take that dark value, darken things more. Don't be afraid of your values. And then also for the middle part, or for like the brighter grapes, don't be afraid to go darker on these as well, because everything's just going to look more three-dimensional as you have them. As you have them here, they're not very three-dimensional looking. And as you push the grapes that are behind the other grapes further back with a darker value, you're immediately going to have more levels of depth. And then, of course, for the foreground grapes, you want to go a little bit darker for the shadows on them, because that value range, as you have them here, they are very neutral, very neutral. All the values are really close to the middle. And so you just want to stretch that out and get some of the darker values darker and some of the brighter values brighter if you can, because I realize this is colored pencil. But if you can do another layer, then your grapes will look a lot better. And then here we go with these two projects that Linda did, these two really cool still life projects. I really like the composition of these. I like the sort of the corner scene, but the perspective is a little bit distorted in both of them. And that's where you're going to want to sort of spend some time when you're doing your initial drawing. Because the first thing is this line, for instance, you want to try to make, now this could be the photograph. I'm just, if these lines are horizontal in your drawing, then good. Just remember, if lines are meant to be horizontal, as soon as you shift the horizontal nature of those lines, it's going to make things feel uneven, almost no matter what. So make sure horizontal lines are horizontal, just first thing. Because these horizontal lines balance out everything else in the image. For instance, the coffee mug here, this ellipse. So you can think of an ellipse, ironically, as a rectangle. If I do this and this, there. So an ellipse, if these lines are perfectly horizontal, by the way. So this line here, oops, that's not a brush. This line here and this line here, those are perfectly horizontal lines, which means the ellipse will hit here also horizontally. So this point here on your coffee mug and this point here on your coffee mug, they should be level, and they're not. And that makes it look distorted and not the way that it should. And then the same thing with the plate. The plate is a circle. In perspective, it immediately becomes an ellipse, which tells you that this center line and this center line, they need to be on the same level because those points need to be horizontal for it to appear to be as a circle, because here it's not a circle. Here the plate is warped because the perspective is distorted, because this line is really not close to being horizontal, whereas these lines on the wall sort of imply things are level, being that they're horizontal, and these lines are vertical. So you have to be careful with your perspective, because that's what everything else about this is really well done, and I wouldn't change anything. But the perspective, a normal viewer that doesn't know perspective, they're going to look at this and they're just going to be like, oh, that's so great. And they're sort of going to be, they're going to look at it and they're going to feel something's off. They're going to be like, hey, yeah, it's really good. You know, I mean, I couldn't do anything like that. I can't even draw a stick figure. You know, that's the typical reaction. But even though they wouldn't be able to do this as well as you did, they're still going to feel like something's off, and they're not going to know what it is. They're just going to say, I don't know, something feels off. And it's the perspective, because the way we see things naturally is in perspective. So you have to be careful with that. And also, these vertical lines need to be vertical. So these lines here, they need to be vertical, because the corner is vertical, and then this line had a few too many drinks, and this line and this line looks vertical. Yeah, that line's vertical, but this line, that line started drinking a little bit too early in the afternoon. So just be careful with those things. The same is true with this, but it's not as obvious. The perspective, the perspective looks better here than it does here, but this line, or the spacing, the spacing in these lines feel weird in comparison to these ones for some reason. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Even I can't quite tell, but okay, maybe. Okay, now I know what it is. So this line here doesn't line up with this line. Yeah, these are on like two different levels, and then I don't know what these lines are. This looks like another piece of wood, like uh like a molding there at the bottom. Something's not right here. And it's the spacing with the wood. Like the wood is different sizes and width, and it it makes that corner just, it makes me scratch my head at that corner because I have no idea what's supposed to be going on here. There's the lines that are converging are confusing. Um, Other than that, like the fruit, the strawberries look like I can pick them off the page. The strawberries look fantastic. Um, but it's just the perspective. Yeah, anytime you have lines, like you have a lot of lines in the first one, and not as many lines in the one on the left. Um, you got to be really careful with lines because they're like measurements almost, and your measurements are off in both of these projects, and so it creates a weird distortion, and you just want to avoid that distortion. So measure twice and cut once. But they look great otherwise. So don't get me, don't misinterpret me. They look great otherwise. Up next is Robin. She submitted this graphite portrait. Also, Robin, yeah, you're in here. For the future, because I almost missed your project. In the Facebook group, when you want to submit a project for me to do a critique of, post it on the thread that I make for the critique, because you just posted this as a post on its own, and I was just fortunate that I saw it, because otherwise I just go for the comments on the thread that I make announcing the critique. So anyway, so this is, I assumed, a graphite portrait. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's graphite. And the drawing itself looks really good. Yeah, the accuracy of the drawing looks really, really good. And I think the only thing that I really want to talk about here is values. Values, first thing you want to consider. Let me just make a small correction to the photo here, because the paper is brighter than, right, forget it, because that's messing with this other photo. So the paper is a little bit darker than what it would be in person, but I'll just leave it as is. So the skin should be darker. First, just let's start there. Everything that makes up this portrait, everything just needs to be darker. Once you have a neutral to light value put down, then you bring in your highlights. So from there, you can have these highlights. And even these highlights, they don't necessarily have to be the value of the paper, meaning you're sort of leaving them blank, but they need to be noticeable, which means that everything around them can't be the value of the paper. And this is one of the most common errors. Okay, so this is the warm gray Prismacolors. Okay, same rules apply. So anytime, it's very similar to graphite. It looks very graphite-like. And this is one of the most common mistakes in graphite portraits, charcoal portrait, or any monochromatic portrait. And that is when doing the skin, the mid-tone of the skin needs to be darker than the surface that you're working on. Unless you're working on like a toned paper, obviously. But there needs to be space in the spectrum of values where the highlights, midtones, and shadows can exist. And the problem with your rendering here is that you've left no space for highlights. Highlights can't exist because it's just the mid-tone of the skin, the base tone of the skin is just the color of the paper. And so as soon as you do that, you leave no room for form to create the three-dimensional look of the face. And so by first just making sure everything is darker than your surface here, it gives you space for the highlights to exist in the skin. And that's going to significantly improve your portrait right off the bat, because you just are not leaving any space for highlights. The highlights can't exist when everything is already the brightest value. Do a lesson on perspective for the art club. I did do a long time ago, I did do a lesson on 2-point perspective, but when it comes to learning perspective, 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective, very easy, straightforward things to learn. And I would recommend just learning that. Just learn 1-point and 2-point perspective. There's probably like 1.5 million tutorials on YouTube for perspective. But if you really want me to do a perspective tutorial, I will do one. Anyways, sorry, I lost track of my train of thought with this portrait. So anyways, yeah, that will just getting a better mid-tone value will immediately make your portrait look better. Other than that, the drawing itself is really good. Careful with these texture lines. So here on yours, on your drawing, your texture lines are very linear. They're very linear. And I know that you're seeing these lines here, but these lines over on this side are not linear, because these lines are creases in the skin, small creases in the skin and of her neck, and her neck is round. So be careful with making lines too linear. Also, don't outline things. Don't outline. Avoid outlining things. I can see the outline on her bottom lip, although it's pretty strong. It looks like lip liner here, so that's fine. But yeah, don't outline her chin, jawline. The other thing is for hair. So first step with hair, find the big shapes. So I'll just use blue. So let's see this shape here? See that shape? Squiggly diamond. You sort of have it. It's not an accurate, not quite that large, but that shape. See this shape here? This shape here? You kind of have it right here. Yeah, a little bit. This shape here. You have this one. That's good. Now this shape. Yep, pretty close. Not the best, but pretty close. And then of course this shape. Nope, you do not have this at all. It's sort of this weird line, another weird line. So this shape you are missing. This shape, let me switch back to the blue. So this shape followed by this shape, you do not have that. It should be like here, followed by a smaller one. You kind of have the smaller one there. And then this shape here, again, you don't have it. It should be sort of here-ish, I guess. So just get the shapes. Don't try to make these textures. Don't do spaghetti hair. Please do not do spaghetti hair. One of the when I color hair or fur for that matter, I don't do individual hairs. I never color or draw individual hairs until the very end, and that's just because I'm doing the flyaways. The only individual hairs that you ever need to color, paint, or draw are the flyaways at the very end. As long as if you identify the shapes, both highlights and shadows, in this case I focused on the shadow, the shadow shapes, fill them in the direction that the hair flows, okay? You just have to find those shapes, fill them in with the flow of the hair. That means for like this shape here, for this shape here, the flow of the hair is sort of pretty linear, sort of like this, has a slight curve to it. So when I'm filling that shape in, I'm just moving my pencil in that direction, right? For these shapes here, I'm filling it in this way. Filling it in, it looks like a wave crashing. So I'm filling it in. I'm not drawing individual hairs. I'm moving in that direction with the intention of covering the paper, but not drawing individual hairs. Keep doing that. So just fill it in that direction. It's important to just move in the direction the hair flows. And then once you have the dark shapes and the light shapes, and in the case of her hair, she doesn't have any what I would refer to as light shapes. She just has midtones with subtle highlight, and then she has dark shapes. So in a majority of light hair, like blonde, light brown type hair, or sometimes red hair is kind of light, usually you can just focus on the dark shapes. So you fill in the dark shapes or identify them, and then you just fill in the rest of the body of the hair in the direction that it flows with, whatever midtone color or value. In this case, it's that color or somewhere around this value, maybe this value. And so I'm just going to color that. I'm just going to fill it in. And my goal is to bridge the value gap between the darks and the lights. And so as I'm filling that in, I'm just focused on creating the range of values that I see. At no point am I focused on like one particular hair that I see. Once you do that, then you additionally do the flyaways. The flyaways are the dark and light hairs. So like a black hair or a dark hair, not necessarily black hair, but a hair that might deviate from the general directional flow of the hair itself. So look at the reference here. So here's a perfect example. Let me do this green. Here's a perfect example of a flyaway hair that just does its own thing. Why is it? Yeah. So this hair right here, you see that? That hair doesn't follow the flow of the rest of the hair. It breaks that. And then you have another one that's sort of like this, and it just swoops out, and you have another one that goes like this, and you have this one that just cuts across everything. It doesn't care. It just does what it wants. It just does whatever it wants. So those are an example of light ones. See if I can find a dark one. I don't really see. She doesn't really have any dark ones, does she? No, she doesn't really have any dark flyaway hairs. Most of them are just light. Her hair is pretty light, so that makes sense. But here's a nice flyaway. Here's a flyaway that goes back the other direction. See, who would have thought that you could do a flyaway that just goes the complete opposite direction of all the rest of the hair? So these little flyaways are the only thing that you need to do individually. So with like 6, I drew 6 flyaway hairs, and if you do like a whole head of hair like this, I would say realistically you're probably looking at maybe 30, like maybe drawing 30 individual hairs, because everything else, remember, is just filling it in with disciplined pencil or brush stroke, and that's it. You never actually have to do the individual hairs until you get to the flyaways. Anyways, so yeah, that's how you can improve your portrait. Otherwise, it looks good. Thank you for the submission, Robin. All right, last but not least are the monthly mastery projects. So for anybody that is not in the art club, you won't really know what these are, so I will explain it to you. So I decided each month I am going to be doing what I decided to call monthly mastery studies, and they will progressively get more complex and difficult, and eventually they will involve color. But I'm taking you from the most basic foundation of creating good art and sort of developing an artist brain and eye. And so this first monthly mastery was a simple still life that you see here, that I took, a photograph that I took. And the whole exercise of the first mastery was to help you develop an understanding of light and form, while also practicing some very fundamental skills within your medium. Now, the thing with these monthly masteries is you can use any medium that you want, and the only thing you have to follow is the very strict guidelines that I set out for each monthly mastery. And so this first monthly mastery was just these 2 simple shapes, and to establish a rule within the values that you use. So the whole point for this project was to identify distinct values within the reference photo. So you have a distinct value here, 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 over here. And there's no variation. So I didn't want any gradients. I didn't want any reflections. I just wanted a simple, consistent value. And then, of course, the tabletop itself here. So you have 0, 1, 2. And the rule set was that for shadows, you need to establish 3 values. I don't know why I went to 3. So these numbers represent shadows, and 3, 4, 5, 4, 5. So 3, 4, and 5 represent light. And I want you to, the purpose was to get you to think about light and shadows as being 2 distinct subsets of values. And that's why I established this number range 0 through 5. And you can only use 6 distinct values. You can't use anything else in between. You can do it with color, you can do it grayscale, but you have to have 6 distinct values, identify them in the reference photo, and then replicate them the way Diane did here. And this is done really, really well. And the purpose of this, the purpose of thinking like this, is to start developing an understanding of how light works. Because what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to identify what the light is hitting and what the light shouldn't be hitting. You need to be able to distinguish what is a shadow and what is not a shadow. And that's the first step of understanding light sources. That's why when I look at a photo, I can deconstruct the lighting situation, whether there's one light, two lights, or three lights, or maybe four. It might get too abstract, but that's why I'm able to deconstruct my references and other photographs and have an understanding of what the light is doing. Having that understanding allows you to understand how to approach it in your artwork. And so that's the whole purpose of these monthly masteries, is to get at the core fundamentals of these understandings and then allow you to build a deeper understanding of them so that it will benefit your artwork. So this was done really well. What I would like to point out is that I would have preferred to see crispier lines. I wanted to see super sharp, clean edges. Like this right here, this part here, I feel is really nice and sharp. And so because this project was so simple, this first monthly mastery project was so easy, I really wanted everyone that did it to focus on super clean, crisp lines. Figure out how to do it the best way that you can. The other thing was getting good coverage. Cover the paper, practice your layering, build a deeper understanding of your medium, how it works, and just get more comfortable and confident with creating sharp, clean edges and full coverage. And so this looks really good. There's just a couple of the edges that I think could have been worked on just a little bit. And then also there's a little bit of haloing around the box. But I'm being nitpicky. Otherwise, it's very good. All right, up next, well, Diane actually did too. This last one was in pastel. She did this one in colored pencil. And you can see how she isolated her shadow values and her light values. And you can see a very clear distinction between each. And with that clear distinction, you can identify the light source and you can see the form of the shapes taking place. When you look at it, it creates a three-dimensional image because you've established this very distinct value system that gives you the darkest dark and the brightest bright. And so that gives you the maximum value range there. You know, very, very vast contrast. So really good. I would say I would have liked to see a little bit more coverage for the background value, but other than that, it's good. Dottie, I think you did this one in graphite, which is a little bit harder to do. First thing, don't label your actual drawing. I don't want you to do that. And then with graphite, one of the things that's like really overlooked with graphite, and I have no idea why, is layering. You don't get a good value with one or two layers with your graphite pencils. So don't be afraid to layer them 4, 5, 6 times. The more you layer them, the darker it will get, the smoother and more consistent it will get. In this case, I can see the clear distinctions between your values, so that's good, that's important. Your third value here for the light needs to be more consistent It's very textured, it's very uneven. So if you're going to use graphite, you don't have to use graphite, of course, but whatever medium you use, the one of the big purposes of the rule set that I set for this first project was to make sure you get clean, like consistent layering of whatever value you chose. And here, everything needs a little bit smoother consistency. Also, don't outline. No outlines allowed. You're not allowed to outline. Realistic objects do not have outlines. So be careful with outlining. Don't label your values in the future, and try to get more clean consistency. That's fine. If you want to practice your drawing skills and you freehand it, that's totally fine. All right. Let's see. Up next is Linda. I think these are the last one. Yeah, Linda has the last one here. She did this one in colored pencil. Linda, you do this in colored pencil? Linda in chat? I don't think I saw Linda today. But I think this is colored pencil. And this one's really good. This one's really, really good. Very clean. You can see just how clean the edges are. No outlines. Very nice distinction between the gradient or the values. Keep messing up my words. So this one came out really, really well. This is what I expect for the monthly masteries. I mean, they are, for now anyway, they are very simple projects. They're very, very simple. They shouldn't take more than like an hour to do. Maybe 2 hours if you really want to spend a lot of time on it. But you have all month, so don't feel like you need to do it in one sitting. If I want to see perfection at your highest level, so take your time with these projects, because not only do I want you to develop the understanding of light and form throughout the process, but that's why I stressed that I want full coverage. Don't let me see the paper. Do as many layers as you humanly can. Get your edges as sharp and clean as you possibly can. Make everything as sharp and as clean and as flawless as you can possibly get it. And take all month if you want to. Like you can get the sketch put down, you can get, a couple layers of your values put down, and then come back a day, a week, or 2 weeks later and do some more layering. Don't feel like you got to do it in one sitting just because it's super easy. Just take your time with it and get sharp, clean lines. Use a ruler if you want. I don't really care about your methodology as far as getting the shapes down, whether you trace it or you use a projector or you freehand it or you use the grid method. The shapes are easy for a reason if you want to practice your freehand drawing skills. And I'm not looking at the accuracy of your drawing, at least not yet anyway. I'm not looking at the accuracy of your drawing. I want to see the mastery of your medium. So I want to see those sharp, clean edges. I want to see smooth, consistent coverage of the shapes. And that's it. I want to see precision in your medium. So maybe I should have made that a little bit more clear for the first project, but I wanted to be a little bit ambiguous for the first project anyway. So that is the last for the monthly masteries. That is the last project I have for critiquing. So that is it. Udon is still hiding in his coconut, so I won't bring him out today. I was hoping to bring him out on stream today so you guys could see him. Anyways, that is going to do it for today. Let me just double check, make sure I don't have any questions. The second monthly mastery is up. It is available. The only change between this month and last month is that now you have to create some gradients. So the objects have gradients this time. So what I expect is smooth, creaseless gradients. So enjoy and have a great weekend. I'll see you all back on Monday. We'll continue our pastel project. And next week, we're going to be starting a new colored pencil project as well. So I'll have the line art and reference photo for that on the website probably later this weekend. So anyways, take care, everyone. Thanks for coming by and hanging out. I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.